reasons why there is this 7-year tribulation. Okay? So we've already kind of talked about this before a little bit, about this 7-year period. There's actually times in Revelations it says this is 84 months or 42 split, and those kind of things. So we know it's 7 years. We also find this out from Daniel as well, Daniel chapter 9, that this is a 7-year period. Now, this is what I wanted to do, just really quickly, 2 reasons why. What in the world is this all about? Why not just God snap the fingers and we just skip to the end kind of thing, right? I mean, we've seen in chapter 6 how a quarter of the world's population dies just like this. I mean, it's amazing. So God, why not? Why not just skip to the end? Why do we have to have all of this in between? And I believe that there are at least 2 reasons, and maybe you can think of more, but we're just going to go with 2 today. Number 1 is this. Our sin, essentially you, okay? You and your sin put Christ on the cross, okay? Now, you didn't necessarily you didn't use the hammer, and you didn't put him on the cross, and no, you were not in the crowd that said crucify him. I understand. I got you. I'm with you there. But I want to let you know that your sin, okay, puts Christ on the cross. He pays for your sin. And there has to be judgment for this. The world crucified him, and and you don't just kill the Son of God and think you're going to get away with it. Let's just put it in normal terms, right? And so this time of 7 years is judgment on an unbelieving world. You rejected the Messiah. You rejected the Son of God. And now it is time for the world to pay. Does that make sense? And so you might think that, well, this seems like a little excessive. If you are one of those who goes, well, this seems a little bit too much, then you really don't understand what sin is. Okay? Like sin is I'll never forgot this. My theology teacher a long time ago, Dr. Morrison, said, sin is cosmic treason before a holy God. Okay? Essentially, this is what you did in your sin. You put your fist in God's face and said, I'm going to do it my way, my how. I don't want anything to do with you, God. I'm going to do it my way, and this is, pretty much pushing you out of the thing. And I just want to let you know, if you only did that one time in your entire life, then treason is what you committed against a holy, righteous God. And whatever he wants to do is just. And if you think that's just too much, it's just, and you just come to this place where you go, I don't understand really what sin is all about. If that was your attitude, okay? So what God is doing in this 7-year period, among a lot of other things, but at least one of the things that seems to be really clear, and that is this. He is judging an unbelieving world for rejecting and ultimately killing the Son of God. Okay? There's number 1. Number 2 is just a little bit longer. Okay? It's a little bit longer of an answer. And it can get into the weeds a little bit, but I'm praying that you'll stick with me for just a little bit, okay? Because I guarantee at the end of it, there is something that you will be able to get out of this. Okay, can you stick with me just for a few minutes? He said, so we're good. Number 2 is this, all right? The answer to number 2 actually starts all the way back in Genesis, okay? I know. You would go like this. What in the world would Revelation have anything to do with Genesis? Okay? Now, I want you to shout out something. I want you to go like this. What book of the New Testament do you think quotes the Old Testament more? Do you understand the question? You've written all of these books in the New Testament, and there are some books who have quoted the Old Testament more than any other book. Okay? If you had to guess, which one would you say? You said that because that's what we're studying, right? Or maybe I told you. Yeah, it's not Matthew, it's not Mark, it's not Luke. Revelation actually quotes the Old Testament more than any other book in the New Testament. Okay? My first guess was Matthew, but Matthew quotes the Old Testament 80 times. Mike, for extra credit, bonus, do you remember how many times? Did I tell you that? Yeah, he listened. Okay, yeah. Hey. Mike gets a check. You better stop talking. I can take them away. Okay, yeah. But yeah, so you wouldn't think that a book that is all about the future would quote the past so often. But there is a magnificent reason for that, and I'm going to tell you at least a little bit about that right now. You ready? So this second answer starts all the way back in Genesis chapter 12. Are you with me? Genesis chapter 12. In Genesis chapter 12, the way that it starts is God looks at this guy whose name is Abram. And Abram, he is from a city called Ur of the Chaldeans. He is not religious, okay? Well, he might be religious, but he is serving not the God of Israel. He is serving probably other gods, okay? But God points and pulls him out of this entire population of the world, okay? This one guy whose name is Abram, you might know his wife, his name is Sarah. Isn't that a beautiful name? Beautiful name. Anyway, that was better. Maybe that's just mine. Anyway, so God looks at Abram, and in Genesis chapter 12, this is what he does. He goes like this. Abram, I'm kind of pulling you out of the rest of the world. I'm going to do something that has never been done. In fact, in Abram, okay, he says, I am going to make you a nation. Okay, you need to pause because maybe you've heard this part before, but you do not, if you just walk over this and think nothing about it, then you don't see the significance of this particular promise that God is making to an individual. Okay, because Abram, he goes, you are going to be a nation. I can imagine if God were looking at a group of people and saying, you're going to be a nation, because there's like kind of a formation already. But God's looking at Abram, and he says, you are going to be a nation. And just like I would have done, Abram goes, I've got no kids. I've got one wife. She's a little old in age. We don't have children. Like, this is ridiculous, God. You've got the wrong man, right? But God goes, no. You're going to be a nation. And this is what he says. He goes, in fact, you're going to be a nation, and when this nation is formed, anyone who blesses you will be blessed. Anyone who curses you will be cursed. And then this is what he says. He throws this in at the end. He goes this, and in all of the world, okay, your nation is going to bless the entire world, okay? Also in this little promise is land. Does everybody understand? Land. If you're going to have a nation, you need somewhere to put this nation, right? Follow me. I need to make sure. Yeah, you're right. You with me? You're with me? Guy, you with me? If you're going to have a nation, you got to have somewhere to put them, okay? So in Genesis chapter 12, he says, you're going to be a nation. I'm going to give you land. You are going to be a blessing to the rest of the world. And that was weird too, because I'm going to tell you, nations back then were not there for blessing. They were there for conquering. Okay? Like, nations back then, it wasn't, how can we bless you? It was, no, how can we take advantage and conquer you? And now God is looking at Abram, and he goes, I'm going to make a nation out of you different from everything else. In fact, your nation is going to bless the entire world. You're not out there to conquer everybody. Okay? So this is upside down, inside out, and all sorts of weird. Okay? If you don't read it right, then you just skip over it. That's at chapter 12. In chapter 15, okay, not only does God say, I'm giving you land, but in chapter 15, verses 18 through 21, God goes like this, let me tell you where this land is going to be, okay? In fact, he clearly gives the dimensions of the land. The reason I'm saying this is because God is not giving him spiritual land. Does that make sense? Like, whoo, there it is. There's land up. All right, that was better than I thought. Maybe I need to work that one out for next time. Okay, I'll work it out. But this is not some spiritual land that I'm giving you. God goes like this. I am giving you land. And this is what he does. You ready? He goes, if you have Israel in your mind, there's Lebanon that's right above it, and then there's Syria right above that. And God goes like this. Half of Syria, okay, that's yours. And he's going down, and he goes, half of Iraq, that's yours. He even cuts down into Saudi Arabia. That's yours. Are you with me? This is this circle here. And he goes, it goes all the way to the river Nile in Egypt. Are you with me? So this land that goes all the way around, God goes to Abram and he goes, that is yours. I am giving it to you. Now, there are a lot of promises in the Old Testament, and some of those promises are like the Mosaic covenant, where God goes like this. If you follow the law, then you will have success. If you do not follow the law, then you will be cursed. Does that make sense? That's kind of like what you do with your children, right? You go, if you touch that light socket, you will be electrocuted. If you do not, you will be safe, right? And that's essentially what God is doing. Did you do that once, Noah? I don't know why. I go, he did that. And he is going to identify with that particular thing. God goes like this. I've got these 613 commandments. If you follow them, you're going to be just fine, and I will bless you. If you stop and decide not to do them, then your enemies are actually going to come and enslave you. Are you with me? That seems pretty clear. But this Abrahamic covenant is different, okay? It's different than the if you then kind of situation. In this particular, and this is important. I want to let you know this is so important that you get this. That in this Abrahamic covenant, God doesn't go like this. Abram, if you kind of fall out with me, then I'm going to take it back. Are you with me? Abram, if your children, which actually even in Genesis chapter 15, he says there's going to be 400 years where there's going to be some disobedience and they're going to be, pulled away. But God goes like this. Abraham, this covenant, in fact, you can read these exact words in chapter 17 of Genesis. This is an everlasting covenant. How long does everlasting last? Forever. Are you with me? Abraham, I am giving you this covenant. There is going to be a nation. In fact, in 17, he makes it clear. In case you were wondering, he goes, can you count the stars in the sky? That's how many your descendants are going to be. Can you count the sand on the seashore? That's your descendants. Not spiritual stars or spiritual sand. Actual descendants are going to come from you. So many, that out of you is going to come nations, plural. Okay? Real, physical, I can see you with and touch you nations. All right? This is all important. In fact, just to kind of solidify this for you, okay? In chapter 15, God puts Abram to sleep, okay? And there is this vision that Abraham sees. And in this vision, okay, back in the day, this is how you, today we just sign a piece of paper, saying a contract. I signed the contract. It means I'm going to do my part. You're going to do your part, right? And you shake hands sometimes or do whatever. Back in the day, okay, this is what they did. Are you ready for this? Good. Somebody say yes. All right, good. Got to make sure they're with me. This is so important. This is so important. So in this vision, what they would do, or what they would normally do, is they would take an animal. They would cut it in half. I know. What do you want to say? Thank you, Joanne. I know you're listening. They would cut this animal in half. They would separate it. And what these two individuals, if I was making a contract, okay, with God, I would take his hand and we would walk through the middle of these two animals or one animal cut in half. And the idea was this. If I ever break this covenant with you, if I ever break this contract, may I be like this animal. You with me? So this was big deal. In this vision, though, okay, when God is walking through, when he's walking through, Abram doesn't walk through it. God alone walks through this animal, okay? What he's saying there is, Abram, this covenant that I'm making with you has absolutely nothing to do with you. It is all about me, and this is an everlasting covenant that is with you and ultimately Israel, okay? This covenant. Now, I have said all of that because you're wondering, you're like, what in the world does Revelation 7 have to do with any of this, right? It is right, just for the fun of it. You're like, I have no idea. All right. Now, if you've been studying Daniel chapter 9 with us on Wednesday night at 7 o'clock, right here at Windfall, right in this little area right here, then you got even a bigger and better picture of what Revelation chapter 7 and the rest of it has to do. Because in Daniel chapter 9 specifically, okay, it talks about a 7-year period. And essentially, this 7-year period that is mentioned in Daniel chapter 9, okay, I'm saying that over and over in case you want to read this because I didn't make this up. In Daniel chapter 9, and also it's in Daniel chapter 2, 5, definitely 9, and I think it's in 11, but we haven't done 11 yet because that's this Wednesday. This Wednesday. Yeah, right. Oh, no, that's what I'm hoping. Yeah. So in this Daniel, what he does is this last 7 years that is being talked about here in Revelation, okay, it is You ready for this? It is setting it up. It is setting up for a kingdom that is going to come down, okay? It is going to start a new, because this is what you want to know. Do you remember that land I just talked to you about? Syria, Iraq, Saudi Arabia, all that? They've never owned this land. Israel has never, ever, ever owned this land in the existence of existing. Does that make sense? So this means either two things. God was kidding. Probably not. So we can push that one to the side. Or God was lying. We can probably push that one aside too. Or God just hasn't done it yet. Amen? I'm going to go with that one. That it's been 4,000 years since God made that promise. But this is what I want you to know. God never, ever, ever makes a promise that he does not keep. Amen? Now, in Revelation chapter 7, this is the beginning. This is just the beginning of this thing where God is getting Israel ready for the kingdom that is about to come. Okay? And God chooses 144,000 representatives of each tribe, right? This now gets a little bit more exciting now when you read this. Because what God is doing is absolutely fulfilling a promise that he started a long time ago. And now he is setting up these 144,000, and they are going to go around the world. They're going to tell the gospel. And in chapter 7, it says that there is a group that no one could number, of people that are going to become followers of Jesus through their ministry, okay? But there's one other little thing that I want you to see. It's in Matthew chapter 23. And this is what Jesus said, okay? You ready? Now remember, the first time Jesus came, he was rejected and ultimately crucified. Amen? But this is what Jesus says in Matthew 23. He goes like this. I will not come back until, okay? And now you're going, until what? Right? Like, you're coming back. Wait, when? This is what he says. Until Israel says, you ready? I'm going to do something fancy. You ready? You ready? No? It's fancy. He says, I will not come back until Israel says, Baruch haba Bashem Adonai. You ready? You know what that means? All right, I'll tell you. It says this. I will not come back until Israel says, blessed is he who comes in the name of the Lord. And what Jesus was quoting is Psalms 118. I know we've kind of been all over today, but I just want to let you know this, that Jesus was quoting Psalms 118, which is a direct reference to the Messiah. And so what Jesus is waiting for in this moment, and the reason that he is setting up this 7 years, okay, is because he is picking out 144,000 Jewish men, and they are going to have a revival like nothing you've ever seen. Imagine even in Acts chapter 2, it says 3,000 came to know the Lord, 5,000 came to know the Lord, and then you get, sparse some Israelis in between. But there's going to come a day where 144,000 Jewish men come to know the Lord, and God is setting it up for a specific purpose, because in 7 years, and you see in chapter 14 where all of them come back, they are doing and being what God has called them to do, to get Israel's heart ready because the Messiah is on his way. Amen? They didn't get it, Patrick. You know what I'm saying? No, listen to this. Like 4,000 years, and you might think, well, God has forgotten. Maybe he was just kidding. Maybe he was lying. Maybe it was a spiritual thing. No. God is setting this 7, and this 144,000 is like God's first step of getting Israel's heart ready and getting them ready because, as Daniel says, the Messiah is coming right after that. That is awesome. There's something that I want you to know, because maybe you kind of glossed over that. And I understand. I kind of threw a lot at you. But I felt like if I didn't take a whole message to get this, I would not be doing it justice. Okay? But this is what I want you to know. Are you ready? If you don't get anything else, listen to this. God is a trustworthy God. Amen? God is, you can put your trust in him. It means that when God makes a promise, I guarantee he will come through for you. And it may not be, it may not be the time that you were hoping for, and it may not happen as quick as you would like. It may not even happen anything like you thought it was going to be. But I want to let you know that God is trustworthy. You can place your faith, your trust, your hope in Him because He will fulfill everything that He said that He was going to do. In fact, let me go so far as to say this, that your ability to trust Him, okay? You think about times in your past, okay? Times that were dark, times that you were just wondering what was going to happen the next day, the next moment. You conquered through those times when you trusted God to get you through them. And the reason that you failed during those days is because you decided not to trust in Him, but you trusted in yourself. You with me? And throughout the Bible, what's that? Amen. Right. Right. So, amen. Right. So this entire Bible, literally from Genesis all the way through Revelation, is God's story. And one of the things that He is trying to get across is this. I fulfill my promises. You can trust in me. I will promise and I will make good on those things. And if He says something, you can trust Him. Amen? And in the future, okay, and remember the whole reason that, or at least one of the reasons why I wanted to even go through this is because I believe that our church, that our country, that even the world, let's just be honest, is going to go through a magnificent pressure that we have never ever seen before. You with me? We're going to go through persecution that has never been experienced on our planet before in such a wide scale thing. And this is what I want you to know now before we get there, okay? Is that no matter what happens, no matter what persecution, no matter what they think that they can do to us, to silence us and to get us off track, there is a trustworthy God that you can run to every single step of the way. And it may not be what you thought or hoped for. And you might have to sacrifice things that you didn't realize were going to be on the table. But God is trustworthy. He is faithful. He will never, ever abandon you. I am with you even until the end of the age. God is always, always, always going to be with you. I will provide for you every single step of the way. He will provide direction every single time we call on Him. He is always going to be there. In your darkest of night, whether it is as bright as day, God is always faithful to you, to the promises that He's given to us. I will never leave you. I'll never forsake you is a great promise that I am guaranteed that God will always be there in the darkest of times. Amen? And I know that whole thing of Genesis all the way through, I understand if it's kind of hard to follow, but maybe if you hear it again and again and again, you're just going to remember that if God can keep a promise that's 4,000 years old, then certainly He can keep the promises that He's made to me as well. Amen? This is one of those promises. It's in John chapter 10. This is what He says. He goes, all who come to me are in my hand, and no one can take them out of my hand. And then He goes like this. Oh, if that wasn't good enough, all of them are in my Father's hand, and no one can take them out of my Father's hand. Are you with me? This is a promise, and it is trustworthy, and you never, ever, ever have to worry whether or not Satan can snatch you out of his hand. Nobody can pluck you out of His hand. He is trustworthy, and I can put my life in His, in all that He's asked. Amen? In fact, if you put it in anything else, just know that at the end of this book, everything turns to dirt. You would be putting your faith and your hope, and you've been spending all of your time and making all these other things priorities, and they all just end up like smoke in the wind, I guess. I don't know. I'm trying to think something cool, but that's all I came up with. Sorry, Natalie. Are you with me? This is an amazing God. Revelation 7 is absolutely it is the pivotal turn in this book, okay? Because from here on out, we see how God is judging the world. Yes, absolutely. Chapter 8 and 9. But we also see these little pictures of how God is bringing Israel back to himself. Romans chapter 9. Dennis, you'll like Romans chapter 9. It's about how Israel is going to be brought back into this whole situation, ultimately to restore and to make good on all of the promises that God has made. He is trustworthy. You can trust in him with your entire life. Amen?